Hello friends, I CA Kamakshi Khandelwal welcome you all to my next session in GST. My topic for today's deliberation is time of supply. Before starting with the main topic, I would like to brief you about the taxable event in GST. As I've already discussed in my webinar on supply, the taxable event in GST is supply. As against the current indirect tax regime, where the taxable event is removal, in the case of manufacture and sale of goods, rendering of service in the case of service tax, and import or export of goods in the case of imports or exports. There is only one taxable event in GST, that is supply. GST is applicable on the supply of goods or services or both. Now, coming over to my main topic, time of supply. What is time of supply? Time of supply is the point in time when my liability to pay tax arises. Time of supply has been defined in section 12, 13 and 14 of the CGST Act 2017. Section 12 provides time of supply in respect of goods. Section 13 provides time of supply in respect of services. And section 14 provides time of supply when there is a change in the rate of tax in the case of goods as well as services. I will discuss each of the sections one by one. First, I would like to discuss section 12, time of supply in respect of goods. In this, I would like to first discuss forward charge. What is forward charge? Forward charge means the supplier is liable to charge and pay tax to the government. According to section 12 subsection 2, time of supply of goods shall be the earliest of the date of invoice, the last date on which the invoice is required to be issued under section 31 subsection 1. Now what is the section 31 subsection 1? Section 31 subsection 1 says a registered person supplying taxable goods shall issue an invoice before or at the time of removal of goods for supply to the recipient where the supply involves movement of goods or delivery of goods or making the goods available to the recipient in any other case. So that shall be my last date to issue the invoice. Third parameter is the date of receipt of payment. Now let us understand this provision with the help of an example. For example, you gave me 5 lakh rupees advance money on 1st June 2017 for supply of goods after 1 month. Say on 1st July 2017. So the date of removal of the goods become 1st July 2017. Now, what shall be the time of supply in such a scenario? The time of supply shall be the earliest of first parameter, the date of issue of invoice. On 1st June 2017, I haven't raised any invoice. I have only received the advance money. So this factor can't be triggered to consider my tax liability. Second parameter, the last date on which the invoice is required to be issued under section 31 subsection 1. What does that section says in my example? In case I shall be required to issue invoice before or at the time of removal where the supply involves movement of the goods. So the date of issue of invoice shall be the date of removal of goods. In case the supply does not involve movement of goods or any other case, the date of delivery of the goods shall be the last date on which I am required to raise the invoice. The third parameter is the date of receipt of payment. I have received the advance money on 1st June 2017. So now the question is whether GST is applicable at the time of receipt of the advance money. Answer is yes. GST is applicable at the time of receipt of advance money, even if my taxable event, that is supply, has not yet taken place by the virtue of time of supply of provisions. Now one question that comes in my mind is, am I supposed to raise a tax invoice even when I have not supplied any goods? The answer is no. According to the invoice rules, a receipt voucher is required to be issued at the time of receipt of advance. This receipt voucher would subsequently be adjusted against the advance that I would be issuing at the time of removal of the goods. The GST liability that I had paid at the time of issue of receipt voucher will be subsequently adjusted with the liability arising at the time of issue of invoice. Therefore, at the time of issue of invoice, I would not be required to discharge any GST liability. Now, another question comes in my mind. Can I, being the recipient, claim the credit of the GST paid at the time of payment of advance to the supplier? The answer is no. I cannot take the credit. I can only take the credit when I have received the goods and also a tax invoice has been raised for the same. Now, coming over to the next issue, the date of payment. The date of receipt of payment according to section 12 subsection 2 is the date on which the payment is entered in the books of accounts or the date on which the payment is credited in my bank account, whichever is earlier. For example, I gave a check to you, but I didn't deposit it in the bank and I passed the entry in my books of accounts for the receipt of the same. Now, the taxable event, the time of supply shall be determined at the time of passing the entry in my books of accounts. Later, when I deposited the check in the bank for clearance, it bounced. Now what happens? The GST liability that I had paid at the time of passing the entry in the books of accounts remains paid even though I have not received any money from the client. My time of supply remains unchanged. That is, it shall be the date of passing the entry in my books of accounts, even if I have not received the money. Now coming over to the next subsection, time of supply of goods in the case of reverse charge. Reverse charge means the liability to pay tax is on the recipient. The recipient is required to deposit the tax to the government. First time the reverse charge has been introduced on the supply of goods. Currently, reverse charge was there only in service tax, although there was a concept of purchase tax in some of the states. As per section 9 subsection 3 and section 9 subsection 4 of the CGST Act 2017, reverse charge is applicable in the case of supply of goods or services by an unregistered person to the registered person and in respect of certain other goods or services as may be specified by the government. The government in its 14th GST Council meeting held on 19th May 2017 specified the services in respect of which the reverse charge is liable to be paid by the recipient of the service, like GTA, legal service, sponsorship service, etc. But no goods have been specified on which reverse charge is applicable except the goods which I am purchasing from an unregistered dealer. So, according to section 12 subsection 3, the time of supply of goods in the case of reverse charge shall be the earliest of the date of receipt of goods, the date on which the payment is entered in the books of accounts of the recipient, or the date on which the payment is debited in his bank account, whichever is earlier, or the date immediately following 30 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. Let us understand this subsection with the help of an example. I have purchased some stationery from an unregistered dealer on 25th May 2017 and I have paid to him in cash. The date of receipt of stationery is say 26th May 2017. Now I am liable to pay GST under reverse charge since I have purchased from an unregistered dealer. What shall be the time of supply in such a scenario? The time of supply shall be the earliest of the date of receipt of goods or the date of payment. So, in my example, the time of supply shall be 26th May 2017, that is the date of receipt of goods. Since I have made the payment to the supplier in cash and according to the provisions, the date of payment shall be the date of entry in the books of accounts or the date of debit in my bank's accounts. since none of the modes have been used to make the payment. So, the time of supply shall be the date of receipt of goods, that is 26th May 2017. Now, time of supply in case of vouchers. According to section 12 subsection 4, the time of supply of goods in the case of supply of vouchers shall be the date of issue of voucher if the supply is identifiable at that point, or the date of redemption of the voucher in all other cases. Let's take up an example to understand this. Lifestyle issued a 5,000 voucher to me, which can be redeemed for the purchase of any goods up to a period of 1 month from the date of its issue. Now the supply is not identifiable at the time of issue of voucher, whether I would redeem it for purchasing clothes or accessories. So the time of supply in respect of the same will be the redemption of the voucher. But in case Lifestyle issued a voucher worth rupees 5,000 to me, redeemable only against the purchase of ready-made garments, then supply is identifiable at the time of supply. Therefore, the time of supply shall be the date of issue of voucher. Next provision, in case it is not possible to determine the time of supply under the above provisions, then in case where a periodical return has to be filed, the time of supply shall be the date on which such return is to be filed, or in any other case be the date on which the tax is paid. So these were the provisions relating to the time of supply of goods. Now coming over to the time of supply of services. First, I would like to discuss the forward charge. The time of supply of service in respect of forward charge has been provided under section 13 subsection 2 of the CGST Act 2017. According to section 13 subsection 2, the time of supply shall be the earliest of date of issue of invoice in case the invoice has been issued within the prescribed time period, that is 30 days or 45 days in the case of a banking company. In case the invoice is not issued in the prescribed time period, then the date of provision of the service, whichever is earlier. Second parameter is the date of receipt of payment. For example, I am a chartered accountant and I am engaged in the supply of CA services. I am liable to pay service tax under forward charge, currently under service tax. Now from 1st July 2017, I would be charging GST in the place of service tax. Let's continue with the example as I discussed in the case of time of supply of goods. You gave me advance money rupees 2 lakh to file return under GST post the implementation of GST. Now, I will raise the invoice only when I have filed the first return under GST. Now, whether GST is applicable on the receipt of advance? Yes. GST is applicable on the receipt of advance money. The provisions, same provision is applicable in GST as that provided in Rule 3 of the point of taxation rules. Date of receipt of money is the earliest of all the three events. Therefore, GST has to be charged and paid at the time of receipt of advance. Hope I am clear to all of you. Now, there is one more provision in time of supply in case of forward charge as well as reverse charge. It says where it is not possible to determine the time of supply in respect of clauses 1 and 2, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of the recipient of the supply. Now look at the irony of this provision. If I am unable to determine the point of taxation as per clause 1 and 2, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of the recipient of the supply. How would I be able to know when my recipient of service made an entry in its books of accounts? Next, there is one more provision in the case of time of supply for the date of receipt of payment. It says if excess payment up to INR 1000 received of the invoice amount, the time of supply for such excess may be the invoice date at the option of the supplier. Now let's take up an example to understand this provision. For example, I have availed credit card services from HDFC Bank. My total bill amount for the month of June is 23,000, but I have made an excess payment to the bank of rupees 25,000. So now the time of supply for this excess 2,000 would be the date of issue of invoice. So when HDFC Bank would raise invoice for the next month, it would be adjusting my 2,000 excess from my total bill amount. Therefore, the time of supply for this excess rupees 2,000 is the date of issue of the next invoice. Next is the time of supply of service in the case of reverse charge. According to section 13 subsection 3, the time of supply of service in the case of reverse charge is the earliest of the date on which the payment is entered in the books of accounts of the recipient, or the date on which the payment is debited in the bank account, whichever is earlier, or second parameter, the date immediately following 60 days from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. Let's take up an example. I am a GTA and providing services to you. Since reverse charge is applicable on GTA service, therefore you as the recipient would be liable to pay tax under reverse charge. Let's say the date of provision of service is 25th May 2017 and the date of issue of invoice is 25th May 2017. You have made the payment to me on 10th June 2017. So what is the time of supply in such a scenario? The time of supply is the date of payment, that is 10th June 2017. Now let us assume that you have not made the payment to me within 60 days. So now what will be the time of supply? The time of supply shall be 60 days from the date of issue of invoice, that is on 26th July 2017. Now moving on to the time of supply of service in the case of associated enterprises. In case of associated enterprises where the supplier is located outside India, the time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of accounts of the recipient or the date of payment, whichever is earlier. For example, Samsung China provides services to Samsung India. Samsung India passed an entry in its books of accounts on 10th April 2017, while it made payment to Samsung China on 1st May 2017. Now what is the time of supply in such a scenario? The time of supply shall be the date of entry in the books of accounts, that is 10th of April 2017. Next, the time of supply of services in the case of vouchers. It is the same as I discussed in the case of time of supply of vouchers in respect of goods. Now, coming over to the next section, section 14, it says, section 14 is applicable when there is a change in the rate of tax in respect of supply of goods or services. So if two activities out of the three happening before the change in rate, then the old rate shall be applicable, and if two activities out of the three happening after the change in rate, then the new rate shall be applicable. It's the same as currently applicable in service tax. So if the supply has been made before the change in rate and the date of invoice and the date of payment is after the change in rate, then the point of taxation shall be the date of invoice or date of payment, whichever is earlier. Second, if the supply is made before the change in rate and the invoice has also been issued before the change in rate, but the payment has been made after the change, then the time of supply shall be the date of invoice. Third scenario, supply has been made before the change in rate, invoice has been issued after the change in rate, but the payment has been made in advance, that is before the change in rate. Therefore, the time of supply shall be the date of payment. Same shall be the scenario in case where the supply has been made after the change in rate and any of the two activities out of the three, that is the date of issue of invoice, date of receipt of payment, or the date of provision of supply, is happening after the change in rate, then the new rate would be applicable. So this finishes up with the provision for the time of supply in respect of goods as well as services. Hope you all understood the provisions. In case if you have any queries, you can email me at my mail ID. I would be delighted to entertain your queries. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos on GST. Thank you. Have a nice day.